All right, without a doubt, this is one of the most useful jigs that you could possibly have for a cabinet maker. Last episode, I showed you how I made these beautiful dovetail drawers. This episode, I'm going to show you how I make the jig for this hanging file system. Now, this is a jig that I've had for a long time, and it works with legal and letter files, and I need to make a new one, so let's do that. Okay, this is the original jig that I've used, and you can see it's kind of burnt up on that left side there. So I'm going to go ahead and change out this piece. So I need to go to the table saw and make a new one. And it just so happens that this is 3 inches wide, and I'm just going to make it exactly the same by 15 and 15/16 long. So this is a 1/4 inch thick material. Happens to be maple. All right, the next step is I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I get this stop block set up so that I have the correct width. Then I'm going to go ahead and square up this one edge and then put it down to the stop block and cut it to final length. This is really important because when we route this guy, we want to make sure that everything is the exact same size. So I'm just going to double check to make sure that is the correct size. That looks good. Now, of course, because this is an older jig, I'm going to go ahead and take off this top. I can reuse this bottom part, and the bottom part is about 2.5 inches tall or so, 2.5, 3 inches tall. That could be whatever you want. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and use my router table to route these slots, and this stop block is going to keep the depth of cut at the correct depth. And for me, it's just nice to have this set up like this. Of course, you don't need to use a stop block. You could just use a mark on the wood, and that would be fine. But I'm going to go ahead, put this in, and then I'm going to go end for end, flip it over, and I'm going to do the other side, just like that. Now, this is not safe to route like this. You've got to have some sort of a push block. I'm actually going to use my raised panel jig for my shaper just as a push block. And just any kind of piece of wood will work. And I'm going to put my reducer ring in there so it's a little bit safer. And as you can see, I'm going to push this through and route it. Take your time and it'll route no problem. The key here is to shut the router off before you attempt to move this piece. Do not move this piece with the router going. Always stop it. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip it end for end, and I'm going to do the other side. And keep doing this until we're all done. This is really important to take your time and make nice slots. This will affect the cut. If the slot is wavy, your cut will be not good. That mark I made was just to help me align the stop block as I move the fence up. I also, to take a secondary precaution, I set up my square and put a line so that I know that my router bit is going to stop here even if my stop block is off a little bit. That's my stopping point, and I did it on both sides. So as you can see, taking my time, and I was able to hit the stop block, but that line just helps me. Again, these lines, these slots we're routing determine how far in you route. Your ultimate project will have stopping points. These need to be very accurately done. These look really nice. All right, you can see the difference. I mean, you can tell these guys are worn out. Definitely time to change it up. So now what I need to do is make sure that I'm using the non-slippery side, the non-finished side, so the glue will stick. Set my square right there up to 5/16 of an inch. That's the offset. And I'm going to go ahead and make marks all the way down. Again, this is critically important. The more accurate you are with these guys, the more accurate your jig's going to be ultimately. Because if this is put in crooked, as this determines your depth of cut, your depth of cut will be crooked if this is not put in perfectly straight. So you need to make sure that you do that. And I'm definitely using glue I will also pin this with my pin nailer when I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and use 2P10 quick setting glue only because I want this to glue up pretty fast, but also it's breakable, so I can break the joint pretty easily, much easier than regular glue. Okay, this is the delicate part. You want to make sure that when you set this down, you put it on those lines. And if you're not comfortable doing this, you could always use your square. But I didn't put any accelerator on to begin with, but the plywood has a little bit of a bow to it, so it allows a little bit of space. So I could spray it afterwards, and then it locked down nice and tight. The pin nailer works well for this. These are just 1 3/8 pins, and it's good. You could obviously use different pins if you don't have this, but the pin nailer works really well. Look at how nice this is. Oh man, I am very excited. Let's go use it. Okay, well, if you're like me, your guide bushing is going to be too long. An easy way to do this modification is to grind it off. I'm just using my belt sander here. The 1/4 inch material is not very thick, so this guide bushing needs to be ground down to below 1/4 of an inch so it will not interfere with the jig. This doesn't take long at all. Very simple. Now what I do is I take this up, and I need to make sure that I'm referencing off the front, not the back, when I'm doing these cuts. So this is referenced off the front, and I plunge in and I go in a couple of times just to make sure that I've cut completely. Sometimes wood chips get in the way of the guide bushing, so you just need to make sure that there's no wood chips that are stuck in there. If there are, just go ahead and blow them out. This is why I kind of go in a couple of times, plunge in, and then kind of go out, come back in, just to kind of get those wood chips out of the way. And then after I'm done cutting, I take a look and just make sure that I've gone all the way. Just check it without the sawdust. I spin it around and I do the other side. Again, referencing off the front. So this distance that the jig starts is essentially from the hanging folders. If you put those on your workpiece, you'll understand that the hanging folders need a little bit of clearance. So that's what that little space is. What is that, about 1/4 of an inch between the first slot and the front of the jig, and it's symmetrical, right? So that's it. Done. Now I can check to make sure that these have completely routed the correct depth. The part here is really important because I just want to take off these burrs, and not only on the tops, but I want to go on the inside here and just kind of ease and sand these edges just to take off that little burr. And this is what I'm left with, a beautiful result. Nice. So the next step is I need to go ahead and measure these out. So I have 19.5 inches for my drawers here. So rather than measuring each piece, I'm just going to put a mark on my workbench. Now I can transfer that line to these 1 inch aluminum bars. So this is 1 by 1/8. To cut it, you could use your hacksaw. It's going to take forever and a day, but you can do it. Or your miter saw. I don't like to use the miter saw because it makes a huge mess of the shop. So instead of doing that, you could use your bolt cutter. However, with the 1 inch bars, the bolt cutters are a little bit too small. You'd have to go from both sides, as I'll show you right here. If I open up the jaws completely, you'll see it's not quite going to make the cut. So I'd have to spin it around and cut from both sides. But those work really well. So if you happen to have bigger bolt cutters, maybe you could do this. You could also use 3/4 bar if you could find it. That works as well too, and you'll save a little bit of money. So I'm going to use my jigsaw with the metal cutting blade. Okay, now I'm making sure to clamp this guy very well from both directions here. I'm going to go ahead and use my jigsaw. Now this operation does take a little bit of effort because this is 3 pieces stacked, so the blade probably wasn't the sharpest, but it does a great job. As you can see right there, a little bit of filing, That's all that's necessary to take the burrs off. Yeah, sandpaper would work as well. Let's see how they fit. Nice. All right, well, the all-important test here. How does the file folder fit and hang? That's really nice. So obviously, this in particular is going to hang with a little bit of space underneath. You don't want the hanging file folders to be touching the bottom. And also, this gives the ability for the customer to put the file folders on the back if they would like. That would allow for some big storage in the front, like binders or, who knows what. It just gives customers options. And of course, this setup is made for legal and letter. So let's see how the legal fit. The legal file folders are very common, but a lot of people are using letter. So giving people the option is really important to me. Another thing I wanted to note about this is the spacing of these and the depth of cut. The bars are 1 inch. So when you put these bars in, it's dropped down about 7/16 of an inch. You can see it extends up a little more than a 1/2 inch. So that gives nice support. If you were to go down a little bit further, it's going to interfere with the bottom. So this is a nice compromise of support and making sure that the drawers don't have to be extra tall. So dropping down 7/16 of an inch is good, especially with 1 inch bars. Now if I use 3/4 inch bars, I would have to make my drawer sides a little bit taller, right? So this is what it looks like. The result is very beautiful, and I am very happy. I hope that you guys have enjoyed watching this video on making this great jig. For those that are looking for file folders in their projects, this is an absolutely great jig to have, and it's one that I've used for a long time. Can't wait to get this one broken in. Now, with all my jigs, I like to put labels on them. This one in particular is important because I want to put the router that I'm using, the guide bush size, the spiral bit size. This is for an 18-inch file drawer. However, you can use them with 21 inch as well, of course. Letter and legal. Also, this is designed for a 1-inch bar with a 9 5/8 tall box. If I used a 10-inch tall box, I could use 3/4 inch bar and it would work fine. And of course, this is all in reference to the 1/2 inch up, 1/4 inch bottom. If I change those numbers, this would have to change. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.